Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bog Panda. Before we even get started, we have a little bit of a public service announcement. You can't ride a bike with an Xbox controller. I'm Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything, and joining me, as always,
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly at KELLYTHUL on social media. Welcome to Bog Panda. We sure hope you consider subscribing. Hit that bell for notifications of future updates that will include a daily issuance of Hard No, the world's shortest podcast, available totally free with your subscription. And after you've enjoyed all that fine content, stop by our merch store. Many fascinating t-shirts, stories behind them, sometimes no story behind them. But many of them are based off of actual conversations on this actual channel that you won't totally get unless you subscribe and watch all our videos.
it's all you can do.
That's right. That's all we ask.
Well, today we're kind of starting something new for us. You know, we talk a lot about retro games. We've even delved into full episodes on specific games. We've never really done game reviews though. And that's something we thought we would change. And tonight was, our first pick, something that Kelly suggested, and I am all for it because if you can't tell from my blue hoodie and my broken arm because I tried to ride a bike with an Xbox controller, we're talking about one of the most controversial games we've ever brought up on this channel, and that's Paperboy. People watching this video right now have feelings about Paperboy, and they are not afraid to express those in the comments. And I am looking forward to the comment section here and then going through and telling everybody how wrong they are.
Which is Mike's job, apparently, on this show. To attack the audience. So,
it's just the way that I go through life.
So sorry about that. That's the way it goes. Yeah, and so might as well get it off the table to begin with. One of the so there are several things. There are many things Mike and I don't understand. Collectively, there's there's a union of what we don't understand, and then there's huge amounts that we individually don't understand. But common ground, not understanding. There's a few things that really stand out. One is people's infatuation with coin doors on home arcades. There's a lot of passion for that. Not here. So don't get it. It's nice, but can live without it. Not going to pay a premium for a coin door, particularly a non-operating coin door. But that falls
the facade of a coin door.
Yeah, a facade door. But that falls a distant second to, I think, what remains one of our deepest misunderstandings, which is there are individuals who will be adamant that it is impossible to play Paperboy unless you have handlebars, like the arcade system.
So when Paperboy was originally released in arcades, it had a bike handle controller. That's cool. But Paperboy, like Doom, which we talk about a lot on this channel, has been ported to everything. And most people, because of that, have only ever played it with controllers for whatever console they're using, or a keyboard if they were playing one of the early computer versions of it. And then later it's on mobile devices and things, and they're playing it with a touchscreen. So the vast majority of the millions and millions of people who've played this game in its various incarnations and its sequels, because the sequels were never released in arcades, have only ever played it with controllers. I've only ever played it with controllers until I got the Mortal Kombat 30th anniversary cabinet, which came with the arcade version of Paperboy.
And
it doesn't have
included in the box was a pair of handlebars for you.
And there was no handlebars with it, which a lot of people feel very strongly makes the game inoperable. I'm here to tell you, once again, I've played Paperboy with a controller, and I made it. I managed to survive this. I have to assume this is just nostalgia from the arcade fans, because I just don't see how people can't wrap their heads around this unless they're real Paperboys. Like maybe there was a thing when the arcade game came out where you had to go on an actual paper route as like research for your character. I wore a blue hoodie tonight. I couldn't find a yellow hat, but I'm trying to get into character, and I still don't think I have an actual paper route. I still understand that this is a video game, and you can play it with pretty much any kind of controller.
Yep. Yeah, and there are a pretty good batch of us out there that have only played Paperboy with the controller. Although I do remember a time or two with the, because it was a really cool arcade game. It obviously kind of stood out, and there are a few games where that experience is, it's just such a unique setup, but very few as unique as Paperboy was. So really cool idea, but we would argue still playable with alternative interfaces. But
Yeah, we're not saying it's not cool. We're just saying the idea that Paperboy is somehow unplayable without it boggles our minds.
yep. Not that there aren't a few challenges, depending on given the nature of the game. Uh, so I would say I'm more sophomore class Paperboy, or Mike's more of a senior Paperboy in terms of experience. But we both have experience with the game, and we wanted to kind of do a review of it. We had originally planned to say, as I suggested, well, let's just do the Super Nintendo version of Paperboy. Only to find out there is no Super Nintendo version of Paperboy.
Yeah, it must be the only platform that didn't get the first Paperboy.
Yeah, and I think it has Paperboy too.
Yes, it
And
does.
those are
Yeah.
across all the consoles, but the OG Paperboy did not appear on the Super Nintendo, which was interesting. Did appear on the Nintendo 64, which we may be talking about in a future show, because that's a real alternative reality for Paperboy. But it was still interesting. But
yeah, I played a few seconds of that one. I'll have a lot to say when we get there once I do a real deep dive into it.
I gotta knit up a few controller mapping issues or get the cartridge, because it's a tough, N64 is a tough emulation road to emulate, and not only to emulate, but then to have a controller mimic all the wonders of what is a Nintendo 64 controller. So we shall see. So we're going to review the NES version of Paperboy,
which was my introduction to Paperboy. I didn't even know for a while that there was an arcade game. I came across one in the wild somewhere a few years after I had the NES game.
So we thought we would kind of go about it on a somewhat structured as we get basis as we do the reviews, and we kind of add in observations on the game as we go through our categories here. And the one to start off with, kind of the broadest one, it's to me probably the most important one, is the fun factor. How fun was Paperboy to play? Being Bog Panda, we will be using the Panda scoring system. So it's 1 to 5 pandas for each of these categories. So from fun factor, 1 to 5 pandas, where do you land, Mike, and why?
So for fun factor, this is a 5 panda game for me. 100%. So this is very much a Paperboy household. Not only did I grow up playing Paperboy and I'm a big fan of the game, my wife is as well. We have a giant Paperboy magnet on our refrigerator of the NES box art. We're both just really big fans of it. It's a game I played a lot. It was one of the early titles that I got when I got an NES, and something that I played, and I had an NES for a long time. I was one of the people who even once I got a Genesis and moved on to other consoles, hung on to my NES for a while. And some of those later NES games, I'm a big defender of, because they, just like a lot of other systems, when you get late in the life, you get some real gems in there because they've really figured out how to make games for this platform at that point. So, visual presentation and gameplay, you're really getting some of the best content towards the end. But as far as early NES stuff goes, this is a game that, like I said, was one of the first cartridges I got, played it all the way to the end until the system finally died on me.
Yep. So for fun factor, I will go 4 pandas on it. I do not quite to your same passion level, no magnets here. But it's a fun game, and it's fairly straightforward to get the premise and get it. I don't know what neighborhood this kid works, but man, it's got issues. there are tornadoes and knife murderers. There's just a lot going on, a lot of burglaries.
Death.
It's a rough neighborhood, weather-wise and inhabitant-wise, but it's a fun thing. You get the concept pretty quick, and then you kind of execute on it with kind of each successive level getting more difficult, and kind of at the tail end of it to kind of juice up your point score. You get to kind of go through an obstacle course or scoring course. It's kind of fun too there. So I would go for pandas on that myself.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it lacks in realism a little bit. You're clearly in an upscale suburban neighborhood, but there's people with bodies literally buried in their front yard, little mini cemeteries, and people attacking you, and tornadoes, as Kelly said, the actual Grim Reaper jumping out and trying to kill you. And at the end of every block is an obstacle course, which seems odd from a design perspective for the city planning. But yeah, it's a great game.
So next we'll go to controls. So this is, I don't know if we have to put an asterisk by this because of the handlebar controversy, but how would you view controls of this game to be? How easy is it to use the controller to do well in the game, master what you need to, etc.?
So as far as controls of Paperboy go, I just want to reiterate, this is not a bike handle. I don't know how you play this game. No, if you can get past the idea of playing it with something other than the bike handles, I think the game controls fine. It's a little weird to try and explain to people the mechanics of it, but think of it like an on rails shooter, but you can move the positioning of your character. That's really the best way to describe it, because you're throwing papers and trying to hit specific targets when you're doing it. So for your subscribers, you have to either get it on their porch or, for more points, get it into their mailbox without causing damage to their property. And for the non-subscribers, you get points for vandalizing their property, breaking windows, knocking down bushes, things along that line. And I'll save this to the end, but there's a weird, I think, deeper story going on here, but we'll get that at the end. But so, and this is across all versions of it that I've played so far. You are kind of on this constant pedaling path, but you can speed up or slow down. You can't fully stop, but you can speed up or slow down, and you can kind of move left and right to dodge obstacles or go around things. If you need to go up into a driveway to pick up an item, usually extra papers and things like that are sitting there. So you can move, but at the same time, it is constantly pushing you forward along a specific trajectory. So it's kind of odd the first time that you play it, but I feel like you can quickly acclimate to it.
How many pandas for control?
You know what? I'm going to go 4 pandas for control. And the only reason it's not hitting the 5 is sometimes when you're out you can go on the sidewalk, drive across the lawns, or in the street. When you're in the street, sometimes particularly, obstacles can just kind of jump out at you by nature of the actual framing of the screen, and you're just dead before there's anything you can do about it. So unfortunately for that, I'm going to cut one off and give it a 4 for control.
Yeah, I'm going to go 3 pandas for controls, in that simply because it's kind of critical for success in the game that you have like razor like control, particularly as you start to, as you continue deeper into the game, the number of things you need to dodge, the frequency which they appear, the aggressiveness, etc. All pick up, and it's certainly doable. Maybe it'd be easier with handlebars, I don't know, but sometimes when you got to kind of do that serpentine to get past the car on blocks and the Grim Reaper, and that can get a little tricky. But I thought they were solid, and once you get the dynamic, it's okay. And I couldn't agree more that it kind of in the order of challenges, even though you got fences in the yards, which can create some problems, but given the perspective of the game, you've got the most lead time in the yard in terms of what's coming up next, followed by the sidewalk, followed by basically no lead time in the street. And that you're going to come up and you're going to, if there's a car that's parked alongside the curb and you haven't known to anticipate that, you're going to probably be toast. Our next category is going to be difficulty. Now, for difficulty, this isn't like five pandas is super difficult and one panda is super easy. This is, is the difficulty at the right level? So if it's just like perfectly tuned into good and challenging, rewarding game to play, not a walk in the park, just good challenge to it. It's just they really hit the nail on the head. That'd be a five panda. If the game is like remarkably too easy, just not a challenge at all, or just punishingly difficult, just never going to be able to succeed, those would likely be in the lower one or two panda scoring type of thing. So how did they do in kind of tuning in on the appropriate level of difficulty?
So I'm going to go with three pandas on this one. And my knee jerk reaction is actually to say four, because I remember NES games and many of them were punishingly difficult. It was super common to get a game and have to spend tons of time on the first couple levels. So this was around the time they introduced the idea of rentals for games. NES was really big rental thing. So the publishers came up with the idea that especially early levels of games, unlike what you get now, when you start a game, it kind of throws some easy stuff at you to train you and get you acclimated to the game. Back then, the first couple levels of a game were typically the most difficult. It was the reverse of what you have now, because they wanted you to go out and rent the game, not be able to beat it, but be intrigued and hooked enough that you would go out and buy the game then, so that you could finish the game. The idea was you couldn't finish it in a weekend rental because those first couple levels would be so difficult. So as a result of that kind of thinking, a lot of the NES games were just punishing, especially in the beginning. So compared to some of that stuff, Paperboy's pretty straightforward and easy to pick up. It's not too easy. You're not going to blow through it the first couple times you play it. But even having not played the NES version in a while, my first time through, I got through more than half of the game my first time playing through it again. So it's pretty intuitive. I feel like you can pick it up and play it. It is, though, especially for somebody who's not used to that era of video games and the difficulty level of them, it's probably going to be frustrating for them to pick up something like this that just throws all this stuff at you right at the beginning and really doesn't give you any time to acclimate yourself to the gameplay. So that's why I'm going with a 3 instead of a 4.
Yep. So I'm going to go 3 as well. Kind of for some of the same reasons you did. It is the right out of the gate. Basically, the skills you learn within the first minute you play the game are the skills that you're going to need for the rest of the game. And once you start to sort out kind of the world and how things work, those continue to go on. So it is. It's easy to kind of get a grasp on. So I kind of where you were at, bounce between 3 and 4, but I'm gonna kind of stick with 3 on this one. But and I mean this will kind of come into our next category as well. But the the fact you got to get through a whole week once you see it is like, so that makes the game a little more difficult, adds a little more challenge to it. But it's just like, okay, I get it. Could I be a weekend paper? Could I be an every other day paper? But no. But overall, I'd agree. 3 would be a good way to go. 3 pandas. The next category, and based on some pre-show conversation, this will probably be the place where Mike and I are the most different, is repeat playability.
So playability, as far as coming back to it, the repeat value for me, gonna go with 5 pandas. I mean, I'm still playing this from the late 80s. And I followed it. I played it for multiple platforms. I had this on Game Boy and a few other things. I played it on Genesis, of course, and then Paperboy 2. I played that on Genesis as well and continued with a lot of the various Paperboy ports. I've had some fun with some of the ROM hacks people have made of it, of him instead of papers throwing knives and things like that at people. I've had fun with those. So this is a game that I keep coming back to. We're coming back to it again now. And I found myself having a lot of fun playing it again. And I haven't played the straight NES one in a little bit. And it was fun to revisit again. And I'm going to play it again now. So, you know, I think that 25, 30 years or whatever I've been playing it speaks for itself. It's got to be a 5.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go 2, 2 pandas on it.
Ooh, that we're way off there.
And yeah, and it's just so I enjoy the game and it's fun, but the game is the game and the levels are the levels, and there's not a big universe in Paperboy. There's one series of events that you kind of take care of on a regular basis, and it's just and it's why, and it'll be interesting because I expect we will do one of these on Doom now with it being the anniversary or two, a review. But to me, this is why Doom is infinitely more replayable than Paperboy, because with Paperboy, it's you don't have with Doom. If you had success in a room, you say, well, I wonder if I did this instead. Or you can try some different approaches. You can use some different weapons. You can and do some different things. So what can I do? Can I get by without killing any monsters? You can kind of do lots of different things to kind of just change up the gameplay and keep it interesting and fresh. I mean, the model of it, the structure, and it's a fun game to play, and it's a good process there. So certainly if you're just looking to be entertained, it'd be good. But turn to something, oh man, I need to go back and replay this. Because of the repetition in the game, whether it's the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday repetition, or the congratulations, it's a new week, and you're going through it again. That for me is less exciting and gets me fired up to do a replay versus a game where I'm coming back to it. And I was like, I'm gonna try something a little different this time, see what happens. So a lot of this is once you kind of learn the secret to success, you just need to excel at it and continue to do it. So there'll be a little difference between the two of us there.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the furthest, I'm guessing the furthest apart we're going to be on this one. I completely agree with everything you just said, though. This in no way touches Doom as far as what it is as a game, but to me, that's a little bit of an unfair comparison. I just have to take Paperboy for what it is. It's a fun, straightforward, simple kind of game that I'm still playing decades later. In no way could compare to something like Doom, though. You have certain games, in my opinion, that are just, on this level that no other game can touch, whether it's Doom, Mortal Kombat, beat 'em and eat 'em, whatever the game is, that is just, so set the bar so high that it's just unfair to compare other games to them. Make sure you guys tune in when we do our beat off.
Yeah. So, I think there'll be another place where we really differ a lot if we do a full review. One of those games you talked about, I think you and I might line up a little differently, but we'll say. But I do now have 2 copies of that on my Super Console X inexplicably. So there's that. I guess that's something.
I only have 1 copy, so how far off could we really be?
There you go. So the final category is kind of visual appeal. And on this one, we want to kind of keep it fair, that you can't really compare a PC game or even a Nintendo 64 or even really a Sega Genesis game against an NES one and say, well, the graphics are better on this as systems added horsepower. Obviously the graphics get better, so it's not just more pixels and better rendering and all that. But given the platform's limitation, how visually appealing is it given the platform's limitation? Because this game on Atari that Mike has referred to, could potentially get 5 pandas for visual. It's not. This would not be the one to do it. But where they push the limits as much as they can on the environment, and to do it. So you got that. So it's given the limitations of the platform, visual appeal of Paperboy.
Actually, so this is where I'm going to be the harshest on it. I'm going to give it a 2. And honestly, my knee jerk was to give it a 1, even playing it back again today. A lot of it feels, even with that sort of almost isometric view that it's giving you, it feels very flat looking at it. And the graphics, everything's very simple. The houses are very simple. The grass is just, green square in front of each house, sidewalks, gray squares. Everything just feels flat. There's just no sense of depth to it until you get to the amusement park or the whatever course, the obstacle
Course, yeah.
course. Thank you. At the end of it, that's the only time it feels like there's any sort of depth or anything going on to me. But that's the very end of each day. So most of the day, you're just kind of looking at these flat shapes that are solid colors. And again, even going to, let's say, the arcade version being, top version of it, that's not a super visually appealing game. So Paperboy has never been something where it's a visual experience. So I think right off the bat, you do need to kind of take that into account. This isn't something that ever looked great. I just do think this is sort of a flat, lifeless look to it. Even for early Nintendo standards and early Nintendo games, the early NES games, a lot of the games were simplistic. They were better than what you were seeing on Atari 2600, for example, but not long after this, you had Mega Man 2, Ninja Gaiden 2, things like that, that compared to this, it almost looks like you're looking at a different console generation compared to this. And those are on the same system a year or two later. So I have to be reasonable and give it a 2.
No. Yep, I think I'll line up with you on that and go 2 pandas as well for that. There are significant scale issues with this in terms of the bundle of newspapers versus the tornado, the dog. There's a scale issue for me on that. Even they're not really NPCs, but the dudes fighting in the driveway, or the axe murderer that comes out, they're all over the place in terms of there's no consistent scale to this universe, to the the Paperboy universe. There's no scale to the Playboy universe, I guess, but there's no scale consistent there. So I think 2, and I think you make a great point that you can compare the visual appeal of this versus a Mega Man. And there you go. All right. So any closing arguments, or did you want to share some insights on this neighborhood with us?
Yes. So, in the beginning of the game and when you lose in the game, you get the newspaper cover, which includes you as one of the stories, whether it's you quit, whatever it might be. If you look at some of the other articles, though, it talks about all the different things the Paperboy's accomplished on one side. Then on the, bad news side of it, it talks about the neighborhood vandal who's going around doing all this destruction. It's all you. So I think that there's this universe behind this that, in a very lace and whiskey kind of way, it's just using this image to build up the storyline. Lace and Whiskey is one of our Alice Cooper reviews that we did. You guys should go back and watch all those if you haven't. In a very Lace and Whiskey kind of way, it's not giving you the story, but you're kind of getting hints from it from the visuals. So I like this idea of this like fame-driven monster of a kid who's on one hand, this heroic Paperboy saving the neighborhood, delivering the news to people and stopping crimes. And on the other hand, is the biggest criminal that this town has.
Yeah, including, attacking poor dogs with newspapers.
Beating dogs with newspapers, knocking down headstones, smashing windows.
Yeah, it's dark. There's a dark side to Paperboy. That's a great
There's
point.
there's like a Paperboy American Psycho style universe happening here.
Yeah, I think the next American Horror Story is going to be Paperboy. So that'll
They'll
be
definitely find a yellow hat for it. I couldn't. I apologize.
excellent. All right. So after the first of our structured game review type of things, the final panda count is in. Paperboy on the NES gets 18 pandas from Mike and 14 pandas from Kelly. So that's where we'll start. And we'll just continue to, we may just much like back to Alice Cooper, where we've got our lists and the rankings through there, we'll be able to kind of square up future games and you kind of see where things are at. And we'll keep you abreast of all the stats coming out of game reviews from Bog Panda. Any closing comments, sir?
Nope, that's it. I'm looking forward to doing more of these and maybe even visiting some of the other Paperboy games for future reviews.
Yep, that sounds good. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.